And we are live, Simon Holley.
Yay! Good to be with you, Steve.
As our first ever catching up with live stream occasion. Now, we've come on at 2 minutes past 8, which was officially 2 minutes beyond when we should have. Did you go out and clap?
We did, yeah. We were disappointed though, because we normally have a trumpeter in our street, and he didn't show tonight. So.
Is that right?
Yeah, he's normally out there doing something or other, but yeah, he failed to show tonight. I'm not sure why.
And many of your neighbours out on the street?
Oh yeah, the whole loads of people out. Yeah, it's great. We normally have pots and pans, but we didn't do the pots and pans tonight.
Well, this evening was a first for us that we had a lady over the street with kind of maracas, you know, these kind of sort of shaking things, which we've not seen before. But I tell you, my kids are absolutely loving it. It's kind of one of those nights. Normally bedtime is 7:30.
Oh, I see. So you get to stay up.
If they behave well, we're actually letting them stay up to do the clap, which is actually quite a big deal.
Yeah. So how behave well over what period? The last week or just?
Normally it's just that afternoon, but maybe we should extend it to try and increase and improve behaviour.
Yeah, that's right.
We stick Ollie on my shoulders, and then what's lovely is that it's genuinely like a nice community moment, and you've got neighbours not only kind of clapping and stuff, but then you've also got people who are waving at each other now as well, and you kind of starting to recognise faces, and it's actually one of those really sort of special things. Yeah. So even in the kind of craziness of the season right now, it's still drawing a few people together, which is great. Yeah. We like that.
Oh yeah, so good for communities, isn't it? I think you're seeing that right across. Katie Holley, hi Katie, nice to see you.
Katie, good to have you. And listen, just to say, I'm going to give a little introduction for the sort of thing that we're going to be doing. And my guess is that there'll be a bunch of people as we chat that might drift in, drift out. No problem. We don't mind you kind of doing that. We are right now live across Facebook and our brand new King's Arms YouTube channel. And I know it's been some years. We're probably slightly behind the times, actually, which I should be partly apologetic for. But obviously, there's so much video content going out right now. We've decided to kind of get ourselves on YouTube as well, and hopefully it'll give lots of people access to some of the stuff that's going on at King's Arms. But the premise of things like this evening is, well, first and foremost, I'm missing people. So we were just thinking, like, what other channels can we have where we can chat, we can catch up, we can kind of engage both with our church, but also people in other churches, or also people who are just checking out King's Arms or anything else. And if you are joining us this evening, it's great to have you. And me and Simon, as the very first one, we just thought we'd have a chat, didn't we, mate?
Yeah, we'll catch up
and see how people are doing. And it might well be that people have got questions. Maybe people just want to say hello to us, or maybe there's particular things that we can help with, or share a little bit about life and about lockdown and about church, or maybe about how Nottingham Forest promotion push is going. That'll be a good conversation.
That'll be a short conversation between you and I.
Yeah, maybe. I could give you lots, though, mate. I could give you lots. If there are particular ways. That's right. 20 minutes later, I'm still going. But we just recognise that we want to engage with as many people as we can, and we're missing the King's Arms, aren't we?
We are definitely missing people, and I love the online thing, and it's great. It's great that we've been able to do it. Technically, the team have done so well, but obviously missing the face-to-face, missing the connection. Although I think I did 6 hours of Zoom today, so I am seeing a lot of people, but it's not.
It's not the same. Yeah. I'm afraid there's nothing quite that replaces the face-to-face, does it? So it's great. Although 6 hours by anyone's standard is a lot of time on Zoom.
Too much. It was 4 hours back to back in the morning. That was a
wow. Yeah. Well, we'll have to see in the comments threads as to whether anyone can beat 6 hours in a day. Although I would be very surprised.
Yeah, I don't know. No one should beat it.
That's true. I now feel slightly bad by the fact that I'm now getting you to stare at a screen again.
No, it's fine.
Have, painful eyes.
It's good.
Hey, Rob Wainwright, Leeds United, mate. I'm sorry, it's not going to cut it. You are top of the league, I get it. And we miss you too. Missing every one of King's Arms. It is good to chat for a little bit. And just to say, I've got a few of these kind of lined up, both kind of King's Arms leaders over the next few weeks, and I've also lined up a few people who are actually outside of the King's Arms as well, kind of friends of our church. And for me, I was just chatting to Andy Kind this morning, and Andy and I are going to do a kind of bit of an online chat in a few weeks as well. And so it's great to have a few people kind of join us and see how people are doing. and Sharon Daniel doing her Lego Ninjago at the same time as listening in. Sharon,
Nice.
brilliant, love that. Well, listen, Simon, I'm going to ask you a few questions, but
yeah, great.
one of the things that I've decided to do, mate, okay, is that every person we speak to, and I know you would totally agree with me in this, I reckon that everyone's got a story, okay, and everyone has something unique to share about how they met God. And you see, here's my contention. I reckon there's likely going to be some people who just check out this video for the first few minutes, and so I figure let's ask everyone a little glimpse of their story, you know, what it means for you to know God, you know, how you came to put your trust in Jesus. You know, or maybe something significant about your journey that might encourage people who are maybe not part of a church at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think my journey is quite an unusual one in the sense that I actually had a men's group recently where I told my story, and I took 45 minutes and only told about half of it. So I'll do the short, very, very short version.
I'm sure we can do that.
It's quite a long story, but I think the short version was I grew up in a Christian home, but found it was just completely dead to me. And also at the same time, had a very significant pornography addiction. So these things together, crying out to God to kind of set me free, didn't happen. Various other things happened that led me to the conclusion, oh, there is no God. So I actually became an atheist when I was about 17, and was an adamant atheist as well. I wasn't one of these kind of quietly, everyone each to their own. I was more, I was evangelistic in my atheism. But after my first year of university, I had the real encounter with the Lord, and I just knew that that He was real, and so I gave my life to Christ. It was this kind of very profound summer's evening, which many have heard me talk about, where I just it was an inner sense. It was just a knowing. I can't really describe it. And there was a lot of mystery still. There's a lot of things I didn't understand. There was a lot of questions I still had, but I just knew that I had to follow Jesus, and it just kind of turned my, I went into my parents' bedroom, 19 years old, in my pants, and knelt on the floor and just poured my heart. And when you're in your pants, kneeling on your parents' bedroom floor, crying your eyes out, that it's got to be God. You
just
don't do that at 19.
What age are you at 19? Yeah. Okay.
It's not the sort of thing you do at 19. So it was a genuine encounter with God. It was a supernatural thing for me. And then some of the questions and the intellectual side of the faith kind of came later, but that kind of moment was real turning point where I said, I just, you know what, despite these doubts, I'm going to follow you, Jesus, and here I am, 30 odd years later, and totally transformed my life and seen things that I never dreamed I would see, and got a load more questions that I had then, but also had got a lot of answers that I never had then. So it's been a kind of real journey. I mean, Jesus says, "Come follow me," didn't he? And that's very much been my journey. It's follow one step at a time, and it's not all laid out in front of you, but that's been my journey. And just
listen, mate. I know we sometimes take opportunities like this, but I would just honor you, bud. Even you being able to be willing and sharing some of your story, and there's not everyone who'd be willing to, whether it be Facebook Live or in front of hundreds of people on a stage somewhere, talk about their journey of being knelt on their parents' bedroom floor in their pants, or indeed about addictions that you've had. And so, mate, I so appreciate you, and so grateful for the years of friendship that we have. And it really does kind of just allow all of us to be honest when you're so real. And I'm inspired following you, mate, and so grateful for you. And hey, listen,
I think it's just so important. I mean, I think you've modeled that as well, and just think so important for churches to be authentic, for people just to be, not to pretend. I think it's so easy to put a mask on, and particularly when you become a Christian, to feel like you have to have had it all together.
Right.
Because as if you do, then you'll encourage others to to follow Jesus because He's sorted your life out. But I found that's not to be the case. Actually, people are more attracted if you're just real and say, look, Jesus has transformed my life, but it's still not perfect. I'm still following Him. He's still changed. It's a journey. He's still changing me. I still battle. Yes. And I think otherwise it just is a phony kind of thing. It just isn't real. No one can relate to anyway. And sooner or later people see through the masks. You might as well take it off.
There's that line that says no perfect people allowed. I mean, for years of my life, I used to think that the Christians and those who went to church were the ones that thought they had it all figured out and, almost judgmental in their nature. But listen, the more I've been engaged with church, and more I've kind of come to love the King's Arms, the more I realize that actually it's people who are, recognizing their own failings and shortcomings and actually want to depend on God, which is incredible.
And I think it's just so important as leaders as well. I mean, people always surprise us. I actively, every year, I will try and publicly apologize to the whole church. I mean, if I will even be thinking of, is there any, sometimes I'm thinking, I haven't apologized for a long time for anything. There must be something I've done wrong. Because I just want to break this kind of pedestal that so many people put leaders on, and just kind of help everyone realize we're all in this together. We're all following Jesus together. And actually, it's my privilege to serve the church. And one of the ways I can do that is by modeling. So many people have come up to me and said that is the first time.
Wow.
My father never apologized. I've never heard a leader apologize before. I mean, it's sad to me. It breaks my heart because I'm always apologizing to my kids. And so, I make a habit of apologizing to the church to the point of racking my brains at some point to think.
It's so powerful, though, isn't it? It really does break something.
So important. Yeah.
Well, listen, a number of things that I'm going to ask you about, but just to say, if you're tuning in right now and you want to ask questions, if there are particular things that are on your heart or particular things that you want to find out how we're doing on, you're so welcome to kind of post them. And Graham, it's great to have you, mate. It's kind of one of our regular conference visitors. Good to have you. Justin Wharton, love you, mate. Miss you guys. And I'll tell you what's fun, Simon, is that Claire said that she's been used to come to the King's Arms kind of some years ago, but now left the area. But it's been good to return to church during lockdown. We've found a number of people, haven't we, who have kind of connected with us either from across the UK or across the world, who maybe used to come or more recently. You must be finding that fun, just like I am, hey?
I think this thing is so fun, and I think one of the things that the Lord is doing through, the enemy comes to kill, steal, and destroy, but Jesus said, "I come to bring life." And I think one of the ways He's bringing life is just helping us to get a heart again for people who've got disconnected from church. I mean, I don't know Claire's whole story, but for those that are, been far from church, who've got disconnected from church or have never been to church. And actually, I think this whole thing is making me think so much more deeply about how we reach those that, for one reason or another, would never step foot through the doors of a church, but actually would connect. And, it's an easy in, isn't it, to kind of connect on something online. And, the enemy has made access to evil things on the internet so easy. I mean, it's just one click away. And I think the church has still been several clicks away. And actually, we've got to just make it so much more easy for people to connect in and to begin their journey, in the comfort of their own homes. So I feel like there's some things that we will never go back from because of what we've learned in this season. And I'm hopeful that when we do gather again face to face, that there's going to be loads of people who are like, "Hey, I'm part of the King's Arms." I'm like,
come on. Yeah, maybe.
That's
the amazing thing for me about Reach is that, I mean, I was listening to a church leader or ministry leader just this last week, and he was talking about Spring Harvest, the kind of Christian festival. And they were saying that the normal kind of rhythm of Spring Harvest, they would get a few thousand people. And I forgive me, I'm not going to say the exact number because I can't remember how many it was. So it was something like 10,000 people. But this year they put it on virtually, and over 200,000 people connected to it.
Wow!
You kind of think that is phenomenal. And so even in the midst of all the pain and all the difficulty and all the frustration, actually God is still doing something, And it's worth saying, from my perspective, even when we do a chat like this, and of the people watching or the people who are going to watch, we just recognize that people are in all sorts of different places, and there'll be some people who are just exhausted and working their socks off in this season. There'll probably be some people who are really bored and frustrated and are desperate to kind of get out. And there's probably a huge spectrum of whether people are loving it as kind of maybe more introverts, or whether people are hating it and say desperate to be doing some other things. And so, within those boundaries, though, Simon, Holley, I wanted to ask you, tell us some of your kind of highs and lows, in this kind of lockdown season. What's the treasure you're finding, but also what are the challenges do you think?
I think obviously the challenges are easier. I mean, it's just so hard to watch how some people are suffering through this in this country, particularly in the developing world, and obviously through friends and connections, I've got kind of hands into the developing world and how countries are doing. So I think that the challenges are just so in your face, and it's, I think also it's given me and I into people's everyday life before the virus in a way that probably but kind of don't know. You kind of lose sight of in the busyness of your own world, and it's just given me an eye. I just kind of broken my heart again for just the poverty that some people are living in, and that's also and also seeing that through the lens of how many people are suffering through this. Who I've seen it through the lens of single people who really just got so isolated through this, and actually depended on the communities that they could connect to, and rightly so, and just found that so hard. On the lens of the elderly or those from ethnic minorities have really been fearful because of the impact of the virus on them. So that just has broken my heart again and again of just how painful this is for so many, and parents with young kids like you guys, you and Philip, and I've seen the world through your eyes, and just how much of a strain this is. To be honest, so we feel ourselves very fortunate. We've got a garden. Our kids are teenagers. None of us have, as far as we know, had the virus. So we are on the very, soft end of this, and seeing the easiest side of it. The kids are a bit frustrated with the schooling situation, not being able to get, they're missing their mates and stuff. But it's all very, very easy. But it has really broken my heart for the way that some are suffering through it. So that will be the lows, really, is just seeing. Just been reminded, and I think the Lord's really given me a heart again for the poor and for those that are just suffering in life in general. On the flip side, those have been some of the highs. Just actually being able to reach out, being able to support, being able to bring comfort and strength. And my natural makeup is I like change, and so I'm naturally wired to respond well in change. I think I can get quite easily bored and want to move on. So when we're in a season where everything has to change, I would tend to thrive in that season. So but I appreciate that's not everyone, and some people really don't like that. So I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's who I am. So I think I've loved the leader in me has loved the potential of, okay, where could this take us and where could we go? And very quickly kind of switched into that mode. I have to remind myself that not everyone's in that space. There's some people, and I think rightly so, grieving the things they've lost. I've talked to grandparents who, they've had a new first grandchild, and they will never get that time again. That first 2 months, you'll have a second grandchild and a third, but they're still not the same as your first, and they've missed that. And just the pain of that is just really real. But I'm not personally facing that, but I'm feeling that for others. But at the same time, thinking of my mind is also thinking about the opportunities and the kind of where I think this could take us, because I do feel like God is shaking things, allowing this to shake things, I should say, so that we come out different as a result of it. And I think the thinking about those possibilities that's exciting to me. I don't know, how about you? What's the highs and lows of this for you?
I think personally, one of the highs is I guess sort of just having some quality family time. And so in the midst of what's going on, so I'll tell you, one of the things, for example, is that we're just making a point of every day having an hour to have lunch as a family. And it's actually really precious and so much better than kind of having a sandwich at my desk where I used to be, And so we've loved doing that. And I think, being real, and one of the challenges for me, even in the midst of, we haven't been directly kind of connected with people personally who have been kind of good friends who have been caught up too severely in this, but we do know of people who are close to us who really are. And I was chatting to a friend of ours yesterday who's lost 3 family members in the midst of what's kind of going on, and it's just heartbreaking. I think personally I feel like God's doing something in me about processing disappointment now. Just my own kind of personal journey, just about, just this last year. Obviously, you and I have worked really closely to look at King's Arms launching its second site. So much time, so much effort, so much support, so many things, so many hours, and yet we had this incredible momentum. We had
laughing so we don't cry.
No, indeed. And it is one of those where I realized that in God nothing is wasted. And whether that is a kind of pause moment or a redefinition, and you've mentioned various groups in that, but I would want to honor the people who have been putting so much time and effort into both King's House as well as the university site. I'd want to celebrate all the people who are kind of serving our town that you kind of referenced and working so hard. And I know 4 families, I think, who have had kids kind of through this last couple of months. And my prayer for you guys would actually be that, even in the midst of lockdown, you're getting some really precious family time. So whilst it's hard for grandparents, I'd hope that God's really using it to knit you guys together, and that you're knowing God's blessing in the midst of it. So there really is lots going on, isn't there? And just zoom in on your kind of family life, and Simon, because I know you've been pretty disciplined with your kind of routine and sort of making sure that your kind of family's functioning well. Do you want to share a little bit about how that works for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I knew intuitively as soon as this began that one of the things that we were going to need was a new rhythm, and I've seen that learned that through. I've done a lot of kind of change management and in the past, and I just knew that we were going to need a new rhythm as a family very quickly. Otherwise, people were just going to get all at sea. So we very quickly put in, right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do a breakfast at 8:30 together. We're gonna the kids, we agreed that the two that are at school would do 3 hours of work in the morning, and then that was it, because I just knew you cannot do YouTube and PDFs all day. Even adults can't do that. So I just knew, we agree with them, right, let's do 3 hours in the morning, get it. You can either spread it out through the day, or you can get it done in the morning, and then you can have the afternoon off. So they weren't so keen about that at first, but actually they've come to really enjoy that discipline of that.
Great.
Like you, we put in a lunchtime together, which was an hour at first, was now become half an hour. And, we've always done meal times at dinner time together. We've always done breakfast together. Tried to kind of pray together once a day as a family, just the kind of the basics really. And so, we found that. And similarly for me, I tried to keep the kind of rhythm as close as I could to something that would, be functional. And actually, my workload hasn't really decreased. It's just I was on Zoom probably 6 hours a week before, and now I'm on Zoom 6 hours a day. Although not every day. I'm not doing that every day. That would not be healthy. But so I think So I think putting the rhythms in is really, really important. I think, and working out a rhythm that works for you. And if it's not working, then adjusting it and tweaking it and making it, helping it to work. So I think as things move forward, I think it's going to be a moving thing for everyone to readjust the rhythm and okay, what does this work? What's healthy for me? What's healthy for the family? What's healthy for connection? It's going to be really...
in a second, I'll perhaps share how it's been for us in terms of a 3. But one of the things we want to do is obviously engage with people and questions. So I'm going to press a little button here and do something a bit swanky.
Oh, wow, look at that.
It's clever, isn't it? PK's asked a question about boys and bedtimes. And so, asking, have bedtime changed for the boys? Because that's been a real battle for us. And I think I can press that.
Well, they have. Yeah, they've gone late, definitely gone later because, the boys used to be up at 6. I think they had to be up for 6:30 for when they were getting the bus to school. And now, they can have breakfast at 8:30. So they've gained an hour and a half in the morning. So we have definitely let them up later. But we have agreed. Obviously, we've got Kaya at home who's 18, so she can do what she likes. But Caleb and Ethan at 16 and 13, we've agreed a kind of bedtime for them. And we've always been relatively relaxed, and we'll relatively let them self-manage, but we're based on how tired they are. Can you, we're trying to help them lead themselves. Can you function on this amount of sleep? This is what you need. What do you need? Helping that, kind of doing it in dialogue and conversation rather than shout, because ultimately we won't be around forever, and they need to make, our job is, I think one of the big things in parenting for me, the big revelation was recognizing I used to think that my job was to help my kids to do right. Whereas actually my job is to help my kids choose right. And there is a world of difference between the two, because I can enforce behavior and help them to do right. But what happens if you do that is when they're gone from the home, well, they just can revert to anything. But if you can train them to choose right, then there's you can help them make the decision so that when you're not there, they are making wise decisions. So we've always, since they were little, talked about wisdom and the gift of wisdom, and above all things, ask for wisdom. And so, that would be in their language of what's the wise choice, what type of person do you want to become, all those kind of things help. So we did it in that context. But a great question, PK. It's not without its issues as well. There's still times that they go to bed late and we're like, how tired are you? Are you sure? Right. So,
but it is, I mean, one of the things that you've really helped me with, Simon, is that very thing of not wanting to just look for control and obedience, but giving natural consequences for good decisions. So we actually use that this evening. So I know there's people who are watching right now, people like Rob, who have got young kids like us. And I think one of those bits of wisdom that you kind of gave me was around meal times. You see, so meal times was an incredibly painful period for us because, you know, you've spent all this time cooking, you're desperate for the kids to get good stuff inside of them, and yet it is hard work. They don't want to eat. They're kind of, you know, gritting the teeth. Every mouthful seems to take 15 minutes, and it's driving you up the wall. And so what we did, and I don't know whether it was just out of the natural consequences thing, but what we decided to do was just have a time limit, obviously at an age when they could understand. But our youngest, Ollie, has actually just got to this space where we set a time limit of 30 minutes for a meal time. And if the time expires, then I'm afraid that's dinner time over, and there gets to be no pudding, which is a real shame. And yet, but what it did is it massively took the pressure off us. Because of course, you know, actually, we're not going to get uptight about it. Ultimately, we'll let them know when the time's up, and we'll give them some warning time. But that way, it's a really natural opportunity for them to work out, well, I'm either going to eat or I'm going to go without dessert, and that's totally their choice. And so it's a game changer. If you are struggling right now with your kids in that kind of 2 and 3, 4-year-old age bracket, that made a huge difference for us.
Well, I mean, the best book that we ever read, changed our parenting, it changed our leadership, was Foster Klein's Love and Logic. I mean, and it's not the all and be all of parenting, but it's really about discipline, which I think is where what he says is where most parents go wrong. It's actually most of the damage is done around the whole discipline, and so that's the focus. So it doesn't do a whole lot of other stuff around parenting, you know, so be aware of that if anyone picks it up. But that Love and Logic, but there's a whole series of them, but the main one I'd always recommend people to read is Love and Logic by Foster Klein and somebody else. But yeah, it's all about that, how to not be a helicopter parent hovering over and trying to fix everything, not be the drill sergeant parent, or you shall, you know, because ultimately what happens if you do that, then sooner or later you're not around, and then boom, they explode and go crazy. You know, not to be the absentee parent who's like, yeah, whatever, just do what you like, you know, raise yourself, you'll be fine. But actually to be the kind of parent who is a coach and learning how to coach, and your position as coach changes as they grow older. So ultimately you're kind of releasing them to go, and it's just a total game changer, that book. And the way of thinking around it exposed all the control in us, where actually we were thinking it was parenting, but it was really just control. It exposed all this stuff gets flushed out, and you end up, you know, because you're genuinely looking to give the child 2 choices that you're both happy with either one. You know, you can take your coat out, it's cold, rather than you will have a coat. I'm not having a coat. No, it's cold outside. You will have a coat. You'll be freezing. No, it doesn't. All you do, you remove all of that. You just say, look, you can either carry your coat or you can wear your coat. Which would you like to do? Just giving them 2 choices that you're happy with. Very good. So, and sometimes it's hard to come up with 2 choices that you're happy with, though. That is hard. That's the brain work. Is actually coming up with 2. Taking all the angst out of it is powerful. So I'm glad that helped you. It
helped me for sure. And what's fun is that, you know, you've got PK here, and you've got kind of Justin, and you've got Sarah, who are all being like, yes, this is such good stuff. And guys, honestly, this is the reason that we're putting on nights like tonight now. We really want to engage with you. And so if there are particular things you want to ask us questions about, you're so welcome to. And listen, I just highlight another message that Jenna said, Simon, because I think you'll be encouraged by it. But on her very first visit to King's Arms, it was you who actually met with her first and shared your story with her, and so welcoming, so joyful, so spirit-filled. Mate, that's an encouragement, isn't it?
Encouragement. That's great. Thank you, Jenna. That's great.
We love it. We love it. It's great to have new people with us when we get to meet over the internet. We like that as well. Hey, mate, I wanted to ask you though about in the midst of lockdown. I think one of the things that you've really helped me with is trying to work out what's God speaking to you about for that week. And I know this is something, even over the last 7 or 8 weeks, he's been quite clear with you. And I just wonder whether it would be helpful for people who are watching now or watching later to be able to share a little bit about that. Yeah,
I mean, I think for me, the basic discipleship question is, what's God saying to you and what you're going to do about it? You know, I think that's the kind of basic, that's the foundation of we're followers of Jesus. We're called to obey him. Come follow me. I only do what I hear the Father. I only do what I see the Father doing. You know, that kind of the foundation is what is Jesus? What's God saying to you, and what are you going to do about it? So I think I've always tried to kind of live like that. I don't do it perfectly. You know, the Lord told me a couple of years ago to write the second book, and I still haven't done it. So I've been disobedient on more than one occasion, probably more occasions than I've been obedient. But I do keep, that's like my true north. I try and keep coming back to
keep coming back to it.
What is God saying to me, and what am I going to do about it? And so I think particularly in this season, it really began like that because we had made a decision as a team on the Tuesday, a particular Tuesday of the first week pre-lockdown, to meet on the Sunday. If you remember, we'd had long conversations about it. I then had a long catalyst meetings on the Wednesday and Thursday about the same thing, encouragement, everyone know we're gonna meet as King's Arms. People obviously look to us for a lead and blah blah blah. So I had 3 days of this, and then woke up the Friday morning with like this most sickening feeling of we've made a mistake. And I really felt the Lord say to me, "Do you want to follow in this, and do you want to lead in that?" And I think I just had a moment there where I realized I can either just bow to the fear of man and the fear of, oh my gosh, I've just, led everyone kind of the wrong way, or I can buck up and do what the Lord's telling me to do. And so, I made some calls. We had an emergency King's Arms meeting. I had some frantic calls around Catalyst, and then we, took the decision not to meet that Sunday. And so I think it really began at that point. And I think sometimes we have these kind of moments in our discipleship journey, don't we, where God kind of reframes us. And I think from that moment, I thought, I think God's doing something different with me here, learning how to much more closely hear his voice and do the thing that he's calling me to do. And it felt like every week since then, there's been one thing that he's given me to do. And one was around helping create a new platform for the staff to communicate on. Another was around the Sunday work and how we're going to do Sundays. So it felt like each week there's been something. And then obviously the most recent one, not the most recent one, but one some weeks ago was around raising the money for the developing world. So it really felt kind of in his grace. But I just always encourage people, come back to that question: what's God saying to you, and what are you going to do about it? Because you can't go far wrong if you follow that, if you answer that wholeheartedly with a good heart and just try and do it.
Well, the beautiful thing about it, I think, is there's a simplicity to it. So it's accessible to everybody to ask the question of him and just to faithfully respond. And so you've modeled that so well. I was going to ask you about the offering. And so maybe you could even kind of give us a little bit of a window into how you felt like God spoke to you, what happened, the way you put it out, because the response has been phenomenal, hasn't it?
I mean, I've just been so humbling. And I think it's just drawn. So, I mean, it was really, really praying. It was provoked by Nicky Gumbel's Bible in 1 year, which I read. I don't read every day, but I read regularly. And that particular day, it was on Lazarus and the story of Lazarus and the rich ruler, and kind of Abraham's provocation to the rich ruler. If you had everything while you were in this life, you had everything and he had nothing, and you didn't spare a thought for him. And I just was like, really had been praying for the developing. Had a growing concern. I was a growing concern, but had no facts behind it really. But a growing concern. Gosh, if this is hitting us hard, I am nervous. I am nervous about. I had a growing nervousness about some of the developing nations and how they were going to handle it. And then read that, I was like, Lord, I just don't want to get. And we'd spent so much time up until then making sure, we were okay as a community. We phoned everyone in our church, and it was all good stuff. It was all right stuff. We put the church online. We spent hours on that. We'd, created a new platform to the staff to communicate on. We created huddles for the staff. So it was all, none of it's wrong. But I just thought, I don't want to get through this and realize we have kind of looked after ourselves, as it were, which is not a bad thing to do. But we've forgotten the poor, and we've forgotten those that are most impacted. So it was in that moment I was really crying out to God, read that story, and then within about half an hour got this email from a good friend of mine, Martin Tibbett, who was forwarding on an email from two of the nations that we're connected with, saying, Simon, what are we going to do about this? I think we've got a major problem brewing. And I just knew the Lord was speaking.
The timing, isn't it?
The timing. It was just one thing, one thing after another. And then just in the, it's the still small voice, just felt him say as I was praying again, use your energy to raise £100,000 in 3 weeks. And I think that's part of me, part of my, who I am is I have focus in my strength finder. So when I throw myself at something, and I don't always throw myself at the right things.
Okay. I hear you.
When I do, I can kind of go at it. So I felt him saying, use your energy. Just put the gift that I've given you into the right focus, as it were. And so to raise £100,000 in 3 weeks. And so obviously we did that. And I mean, it's just.
Do you know what the total is, like, up to date?
Yeah, I just did a video today announcing that the total was 490.
Do you want to tell people? I was
There's
going
a
to
new
say
one coming out today for 495,000.
amazing.
490, but actually it's actually moved even since we recorded the video, so it's now 515. So it's 515,000. So we've broken 500,000. Yeah. So incredible. I mean, and it's been. I mean, we've spent, you know, for the Catalyst Festival offering where we do videos, we, you know, do so much work.
Preparation. Yeah.
It's all the preparation for that. And this has just been, it was like one short 3-minute video. It's just as a move of God. It's how he's touched the hearts of his people, I think, which is so thrilling. And I think just the emails and the messages that are coming back from people is just phenomenal from overseas. It's just so humbling. And I think what it's going to do is unite our family of churches of Catalyst, unite the poor and the rich and the West and the East much more tightly together, because we stood with them in their hour of need. And I just and I know there's so much richness to come out of those nations. They are just such heroes to me, and so many of them. You know, I was hearing from a couple tonight who are missionaries in northern Iraq, and I mean, just incredible work that they're doing, and just they're thanking me. I'm just like, this is just humbling. It's just humbling, and a privilege, you know. So yeah, it's fun.
And, you know, the gratitude is starting to seep through in the messages. Vanessa, we love you. You know, that people are shouting, wow, hooray. Sean, who I'm getting to hang out with every Wednesday night at the minute. So I love that family. Also, praise God. It's so good. And I tell you the two things from my point of view as I hear you talk that, okay. One is that if God had said to you, raise £500,000 in 3 weeks, probably that would have felt somewhat intimidating, right?
Yeah, it would have done, yeah.
Yeah, he's so good at speaking the right words, I think, because, you know, he put this total where you think this is such a huge stretch that it might even be in the season that we're in beyond us, and yet, you know, you're obedient to that 100,000, and look what he does. You know,
he's always very, very kind to me though in that way. He knows that I'm not a very faith-filled person.
Well, he's always a way to ask for £100,000.
Well, so yeah, I know. But it's just, he's very. So even when I started working for the church, I was working in IT. You know, I was like, I'd had these major prophetic words, and yet I was like, okay, I think what I'll do is I'll volunteer 1 day a week. You know, that was my. Right. My big moment was I'll volunteer 1 day a week, and that was so. Yeah, I'm always, and that was I had a safety net just in case it went wrong, and the whole church thing wasn't for me. I had a way back, you know. So he's been very kind to me over the.
He is very kind. The other thing I was going to say about it, and don't shoot me because this will be the first time you've heard this, but Philippa and I only donated to the fund earlier this week. Okay. So the reason I say that not only is for full disclosure, but also to say that if you're watching this, you can still give as well. Right? The drop down's still there, and there probably is a reality that sometimes, whether it's for pragmatic reasons, just kind of life gets in the way. Sometimes it does it's prevent you from acting in the moment. But actually, there's still the opportunity to do that, and so you know, I'm trusting hundreds of people are going to see this, and I think is it kingsarms.org/give or /donate. Either way,
donate, I think it is. I think it's /donate. Yeah, /donate.
You can do that, guys, and it's kind of support to the people in the right places, and we trust at the right time as well. And I'm sure there'll be lots of opportunities to come. And guys, it's great to have you with us. If you are tuning in right now, a little bit of a live Q&A, and you know, we're just going to have a bit of a catch up. And you're so welcome to be with us. If there are specific things in the 20-odd minutes that we're going to keep chatting that you want to ask about, guys, you're so welcome to. But I'm gonna ask Simon about miracles for a minute, if that's all right.
Yeah.
The reason being, hey, good to have you with us, Raj. Hello, Daniel. The reason being is because we were in a staff team time on Tuesday, and Phil Wilthew provoked us about remembering miracles that we've seen in our lives, because actually it's such a brilliant platform for the faith that we need for the miracles that we want to see. And you know, I got to share, which was amazing. A number of other people did, but I was going to ask you, mate. I don't think you shared on that morning, but you know, what immediately jumped into your mind as things that you've seen God do that you could encourage people with right now?
I mean, there's so many. It was interesting. Links in question. Justin's asked the question of what do you do to feed your faith, which I think is. I'm going
to put it up. Hey, there we go.
I think it's a kind of linked question actually, and I think. What I've thought about it is the big thing to me was a kind of there was a theological revelation of the fact that so many people in the Bible were I always used to think, well, I'm just a skeptical, kind of cynical person who's not very got much faith, and I'm kind of like in the kind of, you know, I was at the back of the queue when the Lord handed out faith, and there's these faith warriors, and I'm not in them. So, you know, it's a little bit like, you know, I'm born 6 foot. There's not much you can do about it. You know, I'm born 5'8". There's not, you know, I'm born this way or that. There's not much. I always thought it a bit like that. You're born one way and you're born another. But what I just came to realize that's complete rubbish. That actually so many in the New Testament. I mean, Jesus called most of his disciples weak faith, you know, lacking in faith, little faith, you have little faith. And yet these are some of the people who saw the most extraordinary miracles, the most extraordinary breakthroughs ultimately. And I think I realized that he was doing that to provoke them to see who they could really be. You know, he was doing that to provoke them to grow. And actually, when he pulls out the centurion and the Syrophoenician woman and says that great faith, I've never seen such great faith. These were not the usual suspects. These were like a Roman woman who was not part of the Jewish community. These were not where you would expect any kind of faith at all. And yet he said these are the greatest faith he'd seen. The reason he did that was because he was showing that you can find great faith anywhere, that it's in anyone, that actually it's not by your kind of religious heritage or any of that kind of stuff that they used to think it was based on. And I think that was probably one of the biggest revelations that made me realize, okay, then, well, how do you grow? How then? It was like releasing me out of the starting blocks. It was like, you know, those American horse races where the gates go. Suddenly it was like, oh, the box that I had put myself in was gone. And suddenly the only thing was, how do I then grow in faith? You know, and that was the journey that I began. And I think that happened, and then very shortly after that, I heard the story from Bethel of the guy with the young guy who goes into the supermarket with the donuts. He goes in to buy donuts, and you heard me tell this story before, but I'll tell it again.
It's a great story. Yeah.
He goes in to buy donuts, and in the checkout queue, it's late at night, American small supermarket, in the checkout queue line. He hears the Lord say to him, the woman in front of him has got double hearing aids. If you pray for her, she'll be healed. So he prays for her, and she is totally healed. She takes off her hearing aids. She's crying. The checkout operator is crying. She said, "Oh my God, you know, God's done a miracle." And he says to the checkout operator, "And I think God wants to do some more. If you let me use your tannoy, I'm gonna, you know, I think he wants to do some more." She's like, "Okay." And so he, you know, says on that he uses the supermarket tannoy. Attention shoppers. God has come into this supermarket. He's just healed a woman at checkout 10. Come here. And so he gets the woman who's just been healed to tell her testimony over the tannoy. And he says, if anyone wants to come and be prayed for, come to checkout 10. So, like, I don't know how many people were there, 10, 20 people there late at night, like 11:30 it was, or something like that. So they all kind of gather around this checkout. And he brings some words of knowledge and says, there's someone here who needs a new hip. There's someone here who's got carpal tunnel syndrome. 2 people respond to that. They both get healed. And then he does like a gospel message and complete with salvation.
Wow.
You know, people hands up.
Wow.
When I heard that, I can remember where I was when I read that story, because it was like an electric jolt through me when I read. All my thinking up until that point had been, the reason that God doesn't do miracles in our, maybe it's because he does it in Africa because they need it in Africa. They haven't got access to hospitals, or they've got more natural faith because it's more of a spiritual culture, or it's just what they need because they've got battling so many other religions and all these excuses suddenly just went out the window. And suddenly I realized he is the same God in Redding, California. And I know what small town America is like. It's just the same. And if he can do it there, he can do it anywhere. And it was those two things together that just kind of ejected me out of the box that I was in and put me on the journey of how do I then grow. And that was a turning point. And so since then, you know, I've just seen, I think the two that would stand out would be one would be the guy who was wearing a back brace, and he'd been wearing this back brace for 5 years, and in a meeting prayed for him, and he was just totally healed, touched his toes. It was just an incredible moment. And another lady who'd been in a car accident, she had a back injury. That really stood out to me. The lady in the other church, I wasn't there, didn't pray for her, but who was 97% blind, and I think her name was retinal cone dystrophy. That was an amazing moment.
Yeah, it's stunning.
And then the 7 miracles on the streets, the teenagers Tabo and I prayed for. That was, I'll never forget that moment. So I mean, so many moments over the years, but I think some of the early ones really stand in my memory because they were the first.
Of course.
We'd ever seen.
It's those breaking new ground moments, aren't there? You know, there's those kind of high points which now sets a new watermark for you to build again from. And you know, trusting God for more, actually. And so grateful for all that we've seen and kind of eager to see more.
I think this whole lockdown thing has actually accelerated us even more. You know, we got the miracle nights going, and I spoke there the other night. We must have had at least 10 people saying that they were healed or improved in some way. I think so. I really feel a kind of acceleration in the spirit to what God's going to do in the season.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, very good. Just to shout out for the miracle night. If you want to go, I think that kind of Marco and Wendy are leading those at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday. Although I don't think they're meeting at half term. All right, so keep an eye on the website to make sure that you've got all.
It's not this Tuesday, but every other Tuesday after that. Yeah. So.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. And so one of those ways that you referenced then, Simon, was feeding your faith through stories and remembering. Other things that for Justin or others who are watching in.
Well, I think Agnes Sanford, who's one of my kind of heroes of the faith. She always compares it to the best illustration she ever gave me. It sounds like I knew her, but I didn't. I've just read one of her books.
in one of her books,
the best illustration she said: if you came home and switched on your light switch and it didn't work, you wouldn't immediately say, "I'm never going to use electricity again. That's it. I'm done with electricity. I'm finished." What you do is you think, "Oh, there must be something wrong with the bulb," so you change the bulb. And if that still didn't work, you think, "Oh, there must be something wrong with the switch." So you check the switch out. And if that didn't work, you think, "Oh, there must be something wrong with the mains fuse. Maybe all the lights out." So you check that. You would go on this investigation until you worked out what is wrong. Why would you do that? Because you have absolute faith in electricity. You have absolute trust that it works. You've got absolute confidence. And she said, that is how we need to approach the miraculous. It's like, this journey of adventure with the Holy Spirit, of working out, okay, where's it? Why isn't it working? What's happening here? And there can be some reasons he'll explain straight away, some reasons a mystery for years, some reasons a mystery for your whole life. You don't know, but it becomes this adventure with God rather than us against God saying, "Why haven't you answered my prayer?" It's suddenly, "Lord, what's going on?" So she would say sometimes she would pray with people and they weren't healed. So she would immediately take someone else, a different gift with her. She would say, "I'd just take someone different," and say, "Well, maybe it's the two of us are needed together." Jesus sometimes, or maybe it's someone else that would need it, or maybe we need to pray more than once. She saw literally people who had she was there in the Second World War. Literally people who had their entire intestines blown out. She laid hands on people and saw their entire intestines regrown.
Wow.
I mean, she saw some extraordinary miracles. But it was from this place of the adventure with God, of working out, how does this power work? We've worked out, if you went back to the cave, back to centuries before they understood electricity, they just didn't get it. But Edison spent hours and hours, thousands of experiments trying to work it out. And she said it's the same thing. With the gifts of the Spirit, we're on this adventure with God. It's the glory of it's the glory of God to conceal a matter. It's the glory of God to search things out. He's not hidden things from you, he's hidden things for you.
Yes.
And so I approach it like that when I want to grow in an area of faith or in anything. I'm like, okay, where's this wrong? Where's this going wrong? Is it a wrong thinking in me? Do I need to get alongside someone who's got a greater faith or a greater gift than me?
Very good.
Do I need to read something? Do I need to get someone to pray for me?
Very good.
It's like that investigation with the light bulb. It's that thing, and I found that so helpful as a mindset to growing in anything.
If people are listening in and want to get hold of that book by Agnes Sanford or about Agnes Sanford, what do you know it's called?
Loads, but the one I love the most is Healing Light. It's called. You can't really even get it like a paperback. You can't even get it electronically, which is.
You got to search eBay. Get yourself on there.
I actually have to read a real book, which is just
off your Kindle. Yeah, I understand. Oh mate, it's so good. And guys, great to have you with us. I'm really pleased that it's helping some people, and glad you get to the opportunity to connect with a few folk. We're only going to do a few more minutes, guys. So if there is anything that you want to particularly ask, I've got 3 questions lined up that have come in prior to this, Simon, which I'm going to bring in, and then so we'll see where we go from there. But one of which I just thought it was worth asking about. Obviously, Rabbi Zacharias kind of went to be with the Lord this last week, and for me, incredibly influential guy, both in my life as I've watched kind of debate after debate and exposition after exposition by him. absolute genius who has helped so many across the world. But I guess I wanted to ask you then, if he's influenced so many, who would be kind of key people? You've mentioned Agnes Sanford already, but who have kind of influenced your life?
Oh yeah, I mean Agnes Sanford would be one. John Wimber, Terry Virgo, David Devenish, Catherine Coleman. What's that American missionaries? John G. Lake.
John G. Lake.
C.S. Lewis, Ravi Zacharias. Who else? Oh, loads. J. John. I only listened to J. John preach for a year. He was the only person I listened to.
Wow, because you were trying to learn. What was that about?
I was a very poor storyteller, and I knew I was very poor, and so I decided who is the best storyteller around, and I thought J. John. So I just spent a year listening to J. John, listening to him tell stories until I could become a better storyteller.
Wow. I think that's so encouraging, though. I mean, because you're such a gifted communicator, Simon, and for those people who are watching, and it doesn't matter whether it's actually in the workplace, frankly, with your family. It is one of those things that's so important to learn from other people and to recognize that we've got champions who come before us, and people like J. John, who I've had the opportunity of just kind of spending a bit of time with. He's a phenomenal gift to the body of Christ. And so, to as it were, find your own voice in the midst of being able to be inspired by other people. I think we all do it to one way, shape, or form. And it's not that you try and replicate or just kind of be a carbon copy of someone else, but actually still be like, actually, these people have crafted a phenomenal gift, haven't they? And so to kind of follow that lead, I think is a really, really important thing. And
Bill Johnson, Randy Clark. Oh, I guess the list goes on.
The list goes on.
Amazing people.
Do you think it gets to the point though when you're like, oh, I hope I haven't missed anyone out who's going to listen to this?
I don't think any of those people will listen to it, but there's more.
Wow. Listen, I think J. John's regularly tuning in to this channel. I'm sure.
I'm sure he is. I'm sure.
First ever King's Arms catching up with. Maybe we'll do him in a few weeks' time, and he'll be like, I remember when Simon Holley told me.
Yeah, that's right.
Really good, really good.
How about you? Who would you say? Ravi, obviously.
Oh yeah, I mean, so there's definitely been some apologists who have kind of been that makes people like the kind of Michael Ramsdens of this world, and
Michael Ramsden, Amy orEwing, yes,
Amy or Ewing, yeah. I mean, Lee Strobel's books were massive for me in my early journey, and so just as I was starting to engage with some of the biggest questions of life, trying to find out like, could there be some possible answers in some of this? I think he very helpfully. I mean, his journey as a investigative journalist who wanted to disprove Christianity was incredibly helpful for me to start wrestling with some of those big things. And
we met, wasn't it, Steve, in a pub?
That's right.
You hammering me for an hour on the big.
Well, for those of you who have not heard, for those people who haven't heard before, Simon and I first met when I was partway through the King's Arms Alpha course in the George and Dragon pub in Bedford.
Yeah, upstairs.
Come on that evening, hadn't you, to sort of see how the course was going. And I was one of those people who was sitting at the edge of my seat, kind of hammering folk with questions, being like, that doesn't make sense. And what about this? And that sounds like a load of nonsense. And then we chatted for ages, didn't we? Down over a pint downstairs.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, mate, love it. All right, listen, a couple of questions which maybe we could, whether it's do together or not. Graham got in touch and was asking about just the vision of TSM, and particularly whether you could see that being spun out. Now, just to say, obviously, Marco and Wendy have been so involved for many years. We'd want to kind of honor them, and obviously they're constantly kind of pursuing God on what is the next step. Certainly, Marco, who's leading TSM, is a kind of brilliant, prophetic, visionary pioneer. He's got lots of exciting plans about what the future looks like. But maybe you could just share from your perspective, Simon, if someone has been right there from the start, and anything that you think you could share about the future?
I think we've got some meetings come up soon actually about where TSM's going. I think we've already seen some other courses launch. So Duncan and Joe down in Christchurch have launched a course, and I think Wendy was and Marco potentially as well was very involved with kind of helping them set that up. So we've have already helped other churches set it up. We haven't gone down the kind of franchise model as it stands. That's not to say we wouldn't have, kind of starting TSM elsewhere. But I know Marco's got great plans, particularly about moving stuff online. I think we've seen a real fruit from Miracle Nights and people really getting blessed by that. So, yeah, I don't know where it's going to go. But certainly my passion is that every town, every village in our nation has not just the words of the gospel preached, but the demonstration. And so however we can be part of making that happen across the world, we owe it to the nation, not just have words, but a gospel that's got words and power. And that every town's got well, you might not believe the words we're saying, but John there used to be blind and now he can see,
Wow.
I just think every town needs a story like that, at least one story like that of something that just is hard to deny. Well, you've really got to go out your way to deny that God's alive and real and working and changing, that Jesus is changing people's lives. I think the church should be that. It should be an active demonstration. It should be a kind of, as it were, city on a hill. And part of that is the words that we speak. Part of it is the care for the poor. But part of it is the signs and wonders. So it's a great question, and we've got some just lots more discussions as we go forward, I think.
Now, if you haven't heard of TSM before, check out TSM Bedford. Search for it, because I can't remember whether I think it's a .org at the end, but do check it out. And TSM is a brilliant course, and it's helped literally hundreds of people, both in their own personal walk with God, as well as actually transforming other churches, transforming all sorts of places. We've got Sarah Brown right now, who's like, TSM changed my life and impacted my family lives, relationship, work life. I'm so grateful for it. So big up you TSM guys. So grateful for each of you. Now I want to ask you a potentially difficult question, Simon. Okay. And so Hazel got in touch, and it sounds like she's a teacher. I'm going to read the question out, and we'll just see how we do with it. Okay. So she'd like to know, how do we go about disagreeing with love? And so she says it's hard to be a primary teacher right now, continuing to provide distance learning, but fearing for the safety of children and colleagues at the prospect of widening school teaching prematurely. So my guess is that, like a lot of people, they'll be considering kind of coming and gathering back together again. And it's not straightforward, is it? And so, I just wonder whether there's any wisdom that you might have on supporting people. We've got a lot of teachers in our community, haven't we? And so a lot of people, I'm sure, facing this right now.
I think lots of prayer. I think praying for wisdom. I don't think there's one blanket answer as to how you handle it. Obviously, every person's situation is different. Every school is different. I think the main thing I would suggest that is communicated is that you're communicating to your head how you honor and respect and want to support them in every possible way, how
very good.
you want to serve the kids in every possible way. And 1 Peter 3, doesn't it, says it's be always ready to give an evidence for give a reason for the faith that you hold, but do it with gentleness and respect. And I think that's just a great principle. Whatever it's basically saying, sometimes Christians have to say things that are disagreeable because of their own conscience. And that illustration, his illustration is it's because of your faith. But he's saying whatever you communicate it with gentleness and respect. And I think that there'll be some who will want to go back, some will disagree, some Christians who will rightly want to go back, and some Christians who will rightly not want to go back, all for their own reasons. I don't think the main thing is that we're not judging and criticizing other people for their personal decisions, and that we're communicating our own personal decisions with gentleness and respect. Because I think if we do that, I don't think we can go too far wrong. And obviously the unions are involved, and it's such a mess. But we've got to be, praying for our teachers, praying for our heads, praying for the government as they make these kind of really tricky conversations, praying for parents as they decide to send their kids back or not. It is a really, really thorny one, really complex one. But I think the main thing that we model as Christians is gentleness and respect right the way through. And if we do that, I don't think we'll go far wrong, and do our best to live not out of fear, but out of a faith. But it does not mean to say that if someone doesn't go back, it's because they're afraid.
Absolutely.
that faith-filled people have to be the ones that go. It's not as straightforward as that. It's recognizing that we can't let fear into our hearts, but it might not be fear that stops us sending our kids back. There might be other really valid reasons. And so I think we just got to be really careful labeling people, judging people, and really being integrous in the way we honor and respect. If we live out of a principle of honor, seeing who God has made the people to be around us, I think we won't go far wrong. We treat them with honest respect.
So much wisdom in that. And it's not always straightforward, isn't it? It's not always black and white. This is what you should do, and so we don't want to kind of take people down that line at the same time as, saying that we're actually praying for you guys as well. We've been praying regularly for those frontline workers, whether you are in the NHS or whether you are, in a kind of teaching profession as well. Mate, I'm going to bring us in to land. This has been fun, hasn't it?
Oh, really fun. Really enjoyed it.
I've really enjoyed this. I hope it's been a blessing to other people.
I've enjoyed it.
Yeah. So you and me have got to chat. Although next time I need to bring a drink. Like I was half tempted to message Philippa partway through, being like,
really?
Bring something in. Yeah. Well, just a final thought, which I would love to ask you, is if you may have a message for any King's Arms people or others who are watching right now. Is there anything that you'd want to say to us? Anything you'd want to say to the church at the moment?
I think the thing that the Lord has really spoken to me about in this season is His heart is that none would perish. It's this. I can't remember which scripture where that comes from now, but hang on a minute. I'm going to look it up.
You're going to look it up. None would perish, but all would come to repentance. That's the verse, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
Is it 1 Peter?
That's what I feel like it's in 1 Peter, but I can't actually remember. Hang on.
You got 2 church elders right now who are using Google to find a verse. It's all right.
2 Peter 3:9. The Lord is not slow in keeping His promise, as some understand slowness. Instead, He is patient with you, not wanting anyone to perish, but everyone to come to repentance. And I think that the thing that God's really provoked me is, do I share His heart in that none would perish? Wow. And I think probably over years, with the kickback, with the pushback from people who aren't interested in the gospel, don't want to know about Jesus, my heart has kind of got a bit cold and hard and probably given up on some types of people. And I just feel like God is really stirring His church again to love those who don't know Him, to love those who are far from Him, to remember that's where we were. And amazingly, He knows that some will perish, but He still has a heart that none would perish. That's His, and He manages to keep both of those in tension. Yes. And I think it's so easy for us when we think, actually, I know that some people will not follow Jesus and just never will, to then think, oh, well, whatever, And I think, and you model this so well, Steve. And I think I'm always inspired by you and your example. But I think the Lord's already spoken to me afresh in this season that we've got to learn how to love those who don't know Jesus, who are far from Jesus. And if there's any of you watching who you're not a believer, not a follower of Jesus, I just want to repent for where you've not found the church loving enough, and just recognize that we want to change that and want to learn how to love those who don't yet follow Jesus. Because I was there, as I told, that's how we started. I was in that place, and I want to learn how to love people who don't know Jesus yet, or are not yet, or are just exploring, just journeying as best as I can. And so I think that's just a real provocation the Lord's giving to me, and I hope that's a provocation for others to get down our knees, to repent from cold hearts and motives that have kind of gone cold, and actually to Lord, give us a love for those who are far from Jesus again.
Absolutely.
And us again. I think that'll be my kind of message, as it were.
So good. Well, listen, just to if you have tuned in, we're bringing this to a close, but just to say, we're going to organize a few of these kind of catching up slots. So PJ is going to do one with me. We've got Wendy lined up, and as I said, there's a few guests as well. So Andrew Cannon, amazing evangelist, is organized to have a chat with me. I've got Rachel Gardner, who we're going to be chatting to as well. And so I really hope it's blessing you guys and that you find it useful. And you say keep an eye on the website and our social media channels to work it out. Couple of messages that I just thought I'd flag up. Claire, you'd be so welcome back up. Sarah, great to have you. Kirsty, thanks for tuning in. Steph Phillips says that people need to think about TSM. We referenced that a little bit. Get yourself on it. If God's nudging you to, He will honor your obedience, she says. And do you know what? I'm going to give, though, an award to my favorite comment of the night. I'm even going to put it up to Helen, who said this: listening to you both chatting and sharing your wisdom and being so candid came just at the right time for me this week. Thank you. So, Helen, great. I'm so glad this evening has been worthwhile even because of that. All right.
Yeah, it has.
Great to have you, Simon. Bless you, my friend. I'm going to end the broadcast.
Great hosting it, Steve. Well done. Thanks.
Thanks, my friend. All right. Take care now. God bless.
Bye.